Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It is FPC Radio Live, and it is Friday, February the 2nd, and it's Groundhog's Day, John. I mean, it doesn't really matter for us down here in sunny Florida, although it is a bristly 57 degrees. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's been chilly here the last couple of days, but not quite the same as what it, I'm sure, is up by you. You know, it's winter. It's February. You know, it's cold, it's gloomy, all that stuff. But
yeah, the sun hasn't been out for like 12 days.
So, wow, that's
it's never sunny in New England.
Yeah, no, certainly not now. The days of winning and celebrating are long over, at least for the football and baseball team. Although, John, if you saw it just a little bit ago, Theo Epstein is back. How about that? And he didn't come in a gorilla suit this time.
Nope.
He's
apparently Pearl Jam's not on tour, so
no.
You got more free time at this point.
Right. No, look, I obviously become a part owner of the Fenway Sports Group. And becoming involved in the organization. Look, it can't be a bad thing. I mean, obviously he's revered around here, but this is a team that obviously needed a little bit of a good. A good positive news because I should have remembered this right off the top, but it was just the other day they were talking about how the Henrys were trying to invest like $3 billion into something I can't remember now, but all I remember is that's why the Red Sox aren't spending any money and looking like a team that's a small market team in a big market,
Yeah, because a lot of people will say, well, it's independent. They own the Penguins, they own the Red Sox, they own Liverpool. Now they're going to be a big investor in the PGA.
Yeah.
It's Strategic Sports Group, which has a $3 billion investment in the PGA. But I think it's with other owners throughout sports. So maybe the Fenway Sports Group's investments, maybe 10% of that, so $300 million. And look, LeBron owns 2% of Fenway Sports Group. Mm-hmm. And if Theo's going to own 1%, that's an investment of probably $70 million, which I don't know what the mechanisms are for that. Maybe I wouldn't say it's gifted to him, but, to use his brain power, he gets a certain amount of equity in Fenway Sports Group. I'd love to see him come back and be president of baseball operations. Yeah. I also think at some point he's going to be commissioner of baseball. He's still fairly young. I think he's 50. And I think at some point, maybe in the next 10 years, you could see Theo Epstein as commissioner of baseball. Look, I remember when I was at the Herald and the Cubs finally broke through and won a World Series, I'm like, this guy could run for senator in Illinois or Massachusetts. He certainly would win because I'm a huge fan of Theo Epstein. He's an incredibly bright guy. I'm also a huge fan of my paisan, Larry Lucchino, who, they feuded at the end, but I respect and think both of those guys were a big reason that the Red Sox turned things around 20 years ago. But, right now, the Red Sox brand in Boston is, I wouldn't call it dead because they're still going to pump out 2.5 million fans there, but a lot of it is tourists. It's the most traveled to place in New England.
Yeah.
It's the biggest tourist attraction in New England. And it's like, what makes Orlando popular? It's Disney, right? What makes Vegas popular? Gambling and all the casinos and the entertainment. Well, Boston's biggest tourist attraction is Fenway Park.
Yeah. And look, I mean, you're turning hardcore fans or even casual fans off just because it does feel like, maybe betrayed is too strong or dramatic of a word, but they pay all this money to go to these, games. And it's like, you put up with the ballpark that's obviously seen better days because it's Fenway Park. And, you do all that because you're like, you know what? You hope that the team's going to be competitive, but it just seems like, again, like I said, they're approaching their philosophy like they are the Tampa Bay Rays, and it's just not working out. So we'll see, but it'll be interesting. What kind of, like I said, I'm with you. I kind of wish he would have gone, more baseball operate like involved. I don't know what his involvement will be, if it's just more ceremonial or kind of just a part-time thing. But either way, it would be nice to see him involved with that. But anyways, we know who's not going to be, I guess, necessarily involved in the NFL next year is Bill Belichick, who, not necessarily surprising, John, just because, again, I said it before. I still think we'll see what happens with this Patriots team moving forward because I'm not necessarily. I mean, look, I certainly can be wrong, but I still don't think they should have gotten rid of Bill Belichick. But that's my opinion. I understand why some other teams may not, want to hire him because of the control part. I mean, and rightfully so. Look, I mean, Belichick's not going to go and answer to what were we talking about with Atlanta? Like, he has like 6 different bosses. Like, he's not going to do that. Why would he, John?
Mm-hmm.
I think he'd be willing to, in some capacity, work with someone, but like at the same time, like the Atlanta situation is just not something that I think he would want. I'll be interested to see what happens with with the Commanders who decided to go with Dan Quinn over Bill Belichick, which I think that's okay, sure. We'll see what happens. But it'll be interesting. They're not seeing him on the sidelines this year.
No, and I find it really interesting that there's going to be 8 new head coaches in the NFL next year, and 5 of them are defensive-minded coaches. So you would think that you're always going to offense in the NFL, and 5 of 8 are defensive-oriented head coaches, including Dan Quinn, right? Mike McDonald was hired by Seattle. Now he's the youngest coach in the league. It's also interesting that Seattle went from the oldest coach in the league to the youngest coach in the league. The Patriots went from the second oldest coach in the league to the second youngest coach in the league. So they swung the pendulum quite a bit. Let's go completely opposite. But yeah, I mean, in terms of Belichick, can he do TV work? Absolutely. He's going to make $25 million for doing nothing next year because he still had 1 year left in his contract. I don't know how he would do in a studio show. I think he would be better in like podcast form because some of his stories can be long, and we've heard him speak about punters on teams and the history of sports.
Yeah.
Like he would have a niche audience, I think, right? Like I don't think the wide masses care about the punter and have him talk about it for 11 minutes or talk about Bronco Nagurski and his contribution to football, whatever. But I think he would have a niche audience. Maybe like how would this sound? A podcast with him and say Peyton Manning. I think that would be fascinating because they could talk about their war stories of facing each other and 5 playoff games, and I think they respect the hell out of each other.
Oh, sure.
I think that would be an interesting thing for him to stick him up on a set with like Bill Cowher and the rest of those guys who he respects and likes. Those positions are like, okay, just say something in 15 seconds and then move on. Like I don't think he'd be good at that. That doesn't really take advantage of what he does.
Well, that's the thing. That's more of an issue with the studio and how these things are covered. Like if you were to give him a X's and O's type segment.
Sure.
I think he'd be fantastic. Like,
yep,
I mean,
absolutely.
That's the thing. People just think that he's just going to be the same guy that he was in press conferences. It's like, how have people not learned at this point that's I don't want to say it's an act, but you know what I mean? Like there's a very certain mode that he's in. He's obviously the leader of the franchise, okay, at the time. And that's who he is. Like people just think he's going to go up there and just like be miserable on camera. Like, no, I mean, this is a guy who back in the day used to have the peanut butter and jelly segment with the Browns, and we do like these weekly like goofy cooking shows. He's awkward and kind of, he's weird, of course, but I think also you can get a lot of value. I mean, look, you get him up there, give him a little bit of time to talk about some X's and O's, and I mean, whew, talk about a learning session, And I think I think that's where he may be best suited, and I think bring some more value to some of these shows who kind of like what you said, they just rely more on just the quick reaction that doesn't really have too much substance.
Yeah, Bill Cowher saying you got to run the football and play tougher defense. Okay, we get that. That's
okay.
basically what you add every week, and then Boomer Esiason and Phil Simms would kind of rant and rave against each other. They're really good friends, but they acted like brothers who would feud. Yeah, everybody's got some sort of role in there. I always thought Howie Long was probably the best one at it between the two shows, Fox or CBS. I thought he really he could communicate his points quickly, with a little bit of sense of humor. But again, he also has tremendous charisma and presence, right? I mean, there's a guy, talk about Benjamin Button. Holy crap, the guy's like 65 years old. He looks 35 at this point. But yeah, I think he would be good at that, Belichick. And again, yeah, get him out there, even if it's a 2-minute segment, he's going to break down whoever's defense. Like he's on Fox, and the big game of the week is the Cowboys against the Eagles. You can break down how the Cowboys are going to attack the Eagles defense, vice versa. I think he'd be fabulous at that stuff. You have to have someone with him that can draw that out of him.
Right.
Like like he had the segment on local TV with Scott Zolak, and I think Zolak did a good job with him. Like he could kind of pull stuff out, have a little sense of humor there, and just kind of let him run with it. There definitely would be a role for him, provided it was more current stuff. Like, again, I would love to hear about the history of football. You would love to hear about the history of football, but I don't think the masses are too interested in that.
They don't want to even know about football from 10 years ago. Trust me, they don't want to hear about the history of football.
I mean, if I had the opportunity to ever interview him, the first thing I would talk about is Burt Jones, because I grew up, that was my favorite quarterback.
And he loved Burt Jones.
He loved Burt Jones, and I've said a million times, the 4 best passers of the football that I've ever seen are Namath, Burt Jones, Dan Marino, and Aaron Rodgers. Didn't say they're the 4 best quarterbacks, just the natural throwers of the football. Those guys were like at a different level. And yeah, I would have loved to have talked to him about that, and I'm sure we could go on forever, and you just wind him up, because that was actually the first place he coached was the Colts as a 23-year-old assistant coach. So yeah, he could pontificate about all that stuff, but I don't think the average person out there really would care about that. They would be maybe more interested in Mac Jones.
Yeah.
Who probably still can't throw the football as good as a 74-year-old Burt Jones.
Yeah, I was going to say, who's better at this point?
Burt Jones still.
I go with Burt.
Sure.
I might go with Burt.
Man, I tell you, I always tell, and I sound like an old guy here, I tell the young people, go on YouTube and check out Burt Jones and just look at some highlights of that guy. He looked like an alien throwing the football back in the 70s. But I think that's definitely a niche for him. And then maybe, again, I think Mike McCarthy did this. Mike McCarthy was fired by the Packers, took a year off, tried to reinvent himself. Maybe it hasn't worked because they keep getting bounced in the playoffs earlier than they should. But maybe if you take a year off and you kind of take a more of a macro look at things rather than a micro look at things, and then maybe when he goes to the interview process next year, he's maybe a bit changed. And this happened with Don Coryell, and Don Coryell was let go by the Cardinals after the 77 season. I believe midway through the 78 season, the Chargers fired their coach and hired him. So he kind of was rushed into duty, but it worked. So maybe mid-season next year, if the Cowboys, Eagles, Bills are 3-5, and they say, well, it's time to move on from these guys. Maybe you bring Belichick in. He doesn't even have a chance to, bring kids in and friends of kids or whatever. And he just coaches the team and maybe puts together a run. I think he can still coach. People talk about his age, but it's not 1957. I mean, 72, 73-year-old guys still got quite a bit of their fastball left. I think he can still do it for a few years, even after taking a year off.
Someone said on Twitter yesterday, they did in quotes, bar rescue, but Bill Belichick and Nick Saban go around the country fixing football programs. And I was like, you know what? That'd actually be really, really funny,
That'd be good. Yeah.
I could see it, But yeah, look, and we said it during the time, or at least I said it. I'm not going to speak for you. I didn't think there was a lot of really good jobs out there. I thought his best options were a few of the playoff teams, primarily the Cowboys and the Bills, because, the Cowboys being a team that could potentially contend. And I don't necessarily think Mike McCarthy was the issue. It's just I didn't know if Jerry Jones was going to move on or not. So if that was the case, well, Bill Belichick seems like a right option. The Bills a bit desperate because they have a great quarterback. They have a decent situation, although a lot of cap issues. So maybe firing their coach wasn't an option, and maybe it's an overreaction. But I can't imagine his leash is terribly long at this point. So like you said, maybe next year, maybe the Bills start slow, and it becomes a necessary move because their windows could potentially already be closed, if not start slipping away. They're going to be a little bit more desperate, I think, next year. But other than that, it's like Atlanta's not ready. I mean, the Commanders, I know they have a new ownership group and everything like that, but I mean, that's not a, necessarily a great situation. So, maybe he does take a year off. Maybe he comes back because he's in his 70s, but by all accounts, he's not, he's a young 72-year-old, like Pete Carroll. Not surprisingly though, the two of them um, are not coaching, which, like not something you would have expected, I think, towards the end of last season.
No, and I'm even more shocked that Mike Vrabel isn't coaching, right? Because people have a high opinion about him, and he's only 48 years old. But again, I can't buy into, well, they don't want to hire defensive coaches. Like I said, 5 of the new coaches are defensive coaches, only 3 offensive coaches. So, it's not like the league is just hiring offensive coaches. I thought that the best job out there was the Chargers because of the quarterback. And I also thought that Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh was the best option. I'm a huge Jim Harbaugh fan. I think he'd come in and shake the program up quickly. He's done it every place he's been.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought he was the best option for any team looking for a new head coach. I also thought that the Seattle job was sneakily a pretty good job because they have a good roster, right? So, like, last year, they went 9-8. The year before they made the playoffs. They've drafted well. John Snyder is, a good general manager. I don't know about the ownership situation. They may sell, but I thought they had a good roster. Geno Smith's not a bad quarterback. If you can upgrade that, then I think you've got something there.
Yeah.
I thought that was sneakily one of the best jobs out there. And they ended up with Michael McDonald, who is now the youngest coach in the league. And
not the singer, right?
Coach. Not the singer, no. That would have been interesting.
Yeah, it would be. It would be.
Well, you could do
be entertaining at least.
Halftime shows. Yeah, why not? I think. Well, Casey Jones, who was, Hall of Fame player and coach, used to sing the national anthem before Celtics game once when he was a coach. And again, he had Bird with Cale Parrish, Dennis Johnson, all in their prime. Like, he didn't have a lot of pressure on him. Like I remember Casey Jones walking through the concourse one game about 15 minutes before tap off, and he was eating a hot dog, like at the concession stand. I'm like, he knew how to coach that team. Like, get out of the way sometimes. And then he sang the national anthem. I go, how cool is this? You got other coaches flipping out and getting all stressed out. But I thought the Seattle job was something that would be appealing. And then the shocker of everything is Ben Johnson. We just assumed he was going somewhere, and he decided to stay in Detroit. Maybe he didn't like the jobs that were being offered.
Yeah, there weren't. Look, you're not going to have 10 great jobs pop up every year. There's a reason why they're popping up. They're not necessarily great situations. So I keep thinking about Michael McDonald, like giving like a halftime speech and just, I think it would be entertaining, but I'm kind of weird like that. But we're going to go through this every year. Raheem Morris, he gets another opportunity. We'll see how that goes. But like you said, it's a lot of 5 defensive hires is kind of unexpected because, again, the offensive trend has been there. But you really need the quarterback. I don't really care who the play caller is. There's very rare exceptions. Like, look, you're going to get Kyle Shanahan's system is great. Andy Reid's system is great. You're going to get the most out of whoever you have at quarterback. It's just like if you have a great quarterback, well, you're going to get more out of it. Hence, what we see with Alex Smith versus Patrick Mahomes and what we've seen with Jimmy Garoppolo, Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, yada, yada, yada versus Brock Purdy. And,
well, the one thing I will push back on Brock Purdy, and I think you like him more than I do, the difference between Brock Purdy and all of the other quarterbacks, Brock Purdy ended up with Christian McCaffrey. Like, I know people like to rail against my paisan Jimmy Garoppolo. He didn't have Christian McCaffrey in the back.
Well, he also didn't have a great set of decision. Yeah, like he wasn't a good decision maker. Like, and he crumbled in bigger moments.
He was distracted, the cheerleaders.
Oh, of course. Hey, I wonder what that didn't he get like, a lifetime pass to like one of the bunny ranches in Las Vegas?
Oh, in Vegas.
Yeah.
Like, pick the perfect city for Jimmy Garoppolo, Las Vegas. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, but Christian McCaffrey does make things a lot easier for a quarterback.
Absolutely, but
look, take advantage of it. Why not? Right? That's the idea. Put your players around.
And look at
that's the idea.
Even so, you still have to execute. Like, it's just, to me, it's I don't know. It's a very weird thing. Like, I think some people are, Cam Newton's still calling him like a game manager, and I'm just like, come on, Cam. Like, what are you doing here? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
Let's
move on from that. The guy's a good quarterback.
Yeah, back-to-back NFC Championship games, and he could look if he wins the Super Bowl. What are we talking about here? So
Yeah.
But anyways, before we go, I do want to bring up real quick, and I saw it yesterday, and it's been floating around. But Baker Mayfield is seeking around $40 million a year, and I'm just gonna say, I called it, John,
Mm-hmm.
and I urge the Buccaneers to appreciate what he did and how he played this past season, but just move on. Move on. Even if it means you have to, you have a question mark at quarterback for a little bit, you just got to move on because you're not paying, and you shouldn't pay for past performance. Like I'm going to come at this from two angles. From a pro player perspective, absolutely, he should get $40 million. Hell, he should get $50 million. I don't care. But from a pragmatic sense, if you're looking to keep this momentum, the Buccaneers franchise has, you move on because you're not gonna get the same performance from Baker. That was a career best year, John. Career best. I'm going to gamble and feel very comfortable making this gamble that it's not going to be that much better, if at all, moving forward for Baker Mayfield. In which case, why are you paying $40+ million, or why would you pay $40+ million for that?
Well, the salary cap's going to go up to what, about 250 to 270 next year. So now he would represent 15-16% of the salary cap, which is where you want to be for quarterbacks. The only thing is, like, if not him, who? And now we're starting to see these salaries dip into the second and third tier quarterbacks. Daniel Jones is now the measuring stick for quarterbacks, because if I'm Baker Mayfield and his agent, I go to the Buccaneers and say, well, Daniel Jones signed for $45 million a year. Derek Carr signed for $45 million a year. My guy's as good as those guys, so you're going to have to pay me. We hear that Kirk Cousins is looking for 2 years, $90 million guaranteed. He's coming off an Achilles injury at 36 years old.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the going rate for quarterbacks. So I get it, but where do you move on from? Now Sam Darnold's probably a free agent. Do you bring him in? I mean, it's just got this quarterback carousel where you just don't know who's playing on which team anymore because they're just moving around every single year. So, you're kind of in a tough situation if you're the Buccaneers. And they got him for $4 million last year.
Yeah.
So this happens in baseball. Like when guys are going early in their career and they're getting paid a lot less than what they're worth, well, that's when they get their free agent contract. And then if you want to even it out, it doesn't seem like as much money, but that's not the way the owners think because, they don't want to fork over all that money. But, yeah, I mean, I think he's the middle of the road quarterback. We're going to rank quarterbacks with the 15, 16, 17, but the dangerous part is, like, if you go away from him now, if you're down at the bottom, now you're really irrelevant, and teams don't want to be irrelevant.
What's better though, John? I mean, are you like if they're just an 8-8, 8-9, 7-10 type of team for the next 3 or 4 years? Like, what good does that do them? It's just the same exact position they were in before Brady, and it's like, yeah, you're not going to get Tom Brady again, but you can at least, and to their credit, this year they kind of, kept building off of that. That again, a lot of positivity in the franchise that wasn't there for a long time. And it's just, I feel like you're just setting yourself up for mediocrity, and that does you no good in the long run, because I think eventually it negates, what potentially could be a good future, because they have some really nice players. I think Jason Licht is a good general manager. Certainly draft wise, he knows how to recognize talent. But it's like, I think it would be a mistake for them to pay for past performance and set them up to, again, it's not going to be devastating for their salary cap, but it's going to affect some of the decisions that you have to make. And I'd rather invest that money elsewhere and reset at quarterback, even if it means going a Sam Darnold route, and just because it's not going to be that much different. It may be a little bit worse, John, but it's not, we're not talking about a team that's, no one's going to look at the if they have Baker Mayfield next year and be like, oh, the Buccaneers, they're Super Bowl contenders. No, they may win the division because it's a watered down division. But I mean, if it wasn't, what are we talking about here? This is a team that might have won 4 or 5 games, like I think a lot of people expected.
Yeah, I mean, and he could also become the guy who just goes from team to team every year as a placeholder. Like if say one of the top 3 draft picks, like I'll use the Patriots as an example. Say they draft Jaden Daniels at number 3.
Yeah,
but
I feel like I'm setting myself up for him to be a Patriot next year.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
Which
so he comes in and spends a year with the Patriots, then Jaden Daniels takes over. I mean, Alex Smith, when he did that in Kansas City, at least played for 5 years because the Chiefs decided, let's bring in Alex Smith. He's a pro. He's going to make us relevant. We're going to win. We're not going to win the Super Bowl, but we're going to contend. And then when they picked the quarterback that they wanted, they moved up and got Patrick Mahomes.
Well,
that just worked out perfectly.
If you want to,
everybody,
if you want to connect the dots and say, hey, Mayfield, has a history with the Patriots' new offensive coordinator, Van Pelt. I'm not talking about the hunter from Jumanji, Colonel Van Pelt or whatever he was called. No,
I'm so old. My guy was Brad Van Pelt, who played in the early 70s.
Yeah, there you go.
Great linebacker for the New York Giants. Oh man, that would probably be the second question I could ask Bill Belichick about Brad Van Pelt.
Well, there you go. You got
for an hour. Yeah,
there you go. You got it all set up. But no, I look. It's like that's the thing. It's like for the Patriots, maybe it's a better option because they have some money to spend and they just need a quarterback. There's no. You're going to get a decent season out of them, but they have a lot of other questions as well. And like you said, this could be a placeholder type situation. I wouldn't be thrilled with it, but it's better than Mac Jones. I mean, that's where we're at right now. And the Jones Zappy connection is just not going to not going to really work for us too well. So
I don't want to see either one of them in next year. I've had enough. Move on. Draft a quarterback. Bring in the veteran and move on because I don't even I think those guys are more pains in the butt for what they're even worth.
Right.
Just move on from them and if you're going to be a young quarterback, show a little humility. Those guys are a little full of themselves.
Well, again, like I said, I mean the Patriots have an opportunity to get better quickly, with a couple really key draft picks, and who knows, maybe they do go the Marvin Harrison Jr. route and put that stud wide receiver in the mix, and you bring in Kirk Cousins. That's not a bad option for the Patriots if they can afford it, and they can. Right. I mean, it just depends on what they do, how they fix the rest of the team. And like the defense, I think is fine. I mean, obviously, I think you always want to keep adding to that. But you have a solid draft offensive line wise. You add a player or two. I mean, John, you can compete next year. You can compete,
sure.
Oh yeah,
so. Yeah. You can be 8-9, which is a lot better than 4-13.
Yeah, well,
no
8-9. Look, I think the rate, depending again, this all really kind of depends. If they go out and get Baker Mayfield, then I think that's probably the window, and that's fine. I mean, you just got to adjust expectations. If they go out and get Kirk Cousins, I think he's a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield, and I think he can. With the right talent around him, like I said, if you go out and get Kirk Cousins, I'm assuming you're probably drafting O-line and maybe you are going Marvin Harrison Jr. and then you draft a quarterback in the second or third round. I don't know. There's if you go the Kirk Cousins route, you're thinking long term with your quarterback. You know what I mean? You're not thinking like, okay, we're going to draft a rookie and start him now. We're going to draft a rookie and see if he develops behind them. So, but anyways, so all right, that's going to do it for us here today. Hey, go watch the Pro Bowl skills competition, huh? Really? No,
can't really. Wait. Can't wait.
Yeah, give me a target competition between Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, and I'll tune in and watch it.
Ooh,
I don't need.
That would be fun.
Yeah, I don't need
That would be fun.
I don't need to see Tua and Jalen Hurts throwing up. Oh my God, that was bad. That was bad. And look, I'm a Jalen Hurts guy, but those are the only highlights that I saw, and there were some bad throws. I'm just like, oh come on, like I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, Tom Brady would just tear this apart. Like you would just like boom. It'd be like Ray Bork in the accuracy contest at the All-Star game, 4 for 4. So, but anyways,
Brady and Rodgers, that would be fun in terms of accuracy.
Throw Drew Brees in there too. A triple threat.
Yeah, it'd be like guys playing darts and hitting nothing but the red dot in the middle.
Right, exactly. No, I like that. Fun. I like that. I'll talk to Tom about that. But
talk to him.
Yeah. Well, last time I tried, I got shooed away by security, but this time I'm going to make it. So, all right. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a great weekend. Next week, Super Bowl week, and we're really going to dive into it. So have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you then.